Hello, everyone. This is Fei Yang. I'm an associate professor in sociology at Tsinghua. Today is my talk. I'm so happy to receive this invitation to give a talk today. And today's topic is about the cultural poverty elevation in China. And I would like to talk about my own research on this particular topic. And I would like to introduce my research on big data. And I would like to use big data as evidence to show that how Chinese government illustrate the poverty elevation achievement with the big data evidence. As the world's largest developing country, with a population of more than 1.4 billion people. And in the past 40 years, China achieved a rapid economic development. But in addition to its weak foundations and very uneven development, the whole nation had long been plagued by poverty at a very large scale, and the level of severity has really been seen anywhere else in the world. So as a result, the Chinese government faced a huge challenge to reduce poverty in the past 40 years. So as the home to nearly 1/5 of the world's population, the complete eradication of the extreme poverty actually is a milestone in the history of the Chinese nation, as well as in the history of the humankind, and making a very important contribution to the cause of global poverty elevation. And early this year, in February 25th, the President Xi Jinping and his state, we have won the poverty battle, and this battle is complete. The China has completed the arduous task of eliminating extreme poverty. And actually, we did much better compared to the World Bank international standard. And according to the World Bank, the poverty line is almost equal to $2 per day per person. And the national benchmark used by the Chinese government is a standard equivalent to $2.3 per person per day. And this standard is applied to rural areas, to the very poor areas. So we have won this victory, this poverty battle. And from this figure, we can see that in the past 40 years, since China starts open up reform, we have achieved a very rapid economic development. And we keep a constant and a steady pace of economic development in the past 40 years. So basically, since China starts open up reform, the whole economy of the nation is take off. We use the take off as a specific term to describe the China's economic development. And from 2012 to 2020, in the past 8 years, we can see that from figure 1, the number of rural residents living in poverty had been significantly decreased from almost 100 million people to 0. And the number of poor counties, the impoverished counties, has also been decreased from almost 800 counties living in the poor status to 0. So basically, we have won this great battle, and we achieved a lot to eradicate the extreme poverty in the past 10 years. So what has been changed in the past 10 years? How can we evaluate China's effort to eradicate and alleviate poverty? And people may think about income. Yes, income. And we have significantly increase those poor people's income, their pocket money. But when we talk about poverty, poverty is not just about income, right? It's just not about having enough money to meet basic needs, such as food, clothing, and shelter. I think poverty is much more than just not having enough money. It's more than income. According to the definition of the World Bank, so what is poverty? According to the World Bank, poverty is hunger. Poverty is lack of shelter. And the poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. So this is about poverty. Poverty is not only about income. And sometimes we can say that the poor people, they share certain kinds of cultural traits. And in sociology, we term the culture of poverty. So the poor people share a set of beliefs, values, and practice, and which served as guidelines for managing their state of poverty. And for example, people from middle-class families, they would like to provide more encouragement for their children to succeed. And middle-class parents, they would like to bring their children to attend different kinds of cultural events, such as attend concerts, visit museums. But in poor household, the poor parents, they were less likely to bring their children to participate in the different kinds of cultural events, because for those poor parents, they do not have such access and the resource to those high-level cultural events. So when we talk about poverty, when we talk about lift poor people out of poverty, we not only talk about income, we also talk about the cultural perspectives, the poverty, the culture of poverty, and how those poor people have more access to different spiritual events and cultural activities. So what has been changed in the past 8 to 10 years? First, basic public services have been much improved. And in addition to providing adequate food, clothing, and safe housing for the impoverished people, the Chinese government has intensified efforts to improve basic public services to cover education, healthcare, cultural, social security, and so on and so forth. And the basic goal is to guarantee impoverished people to have enough access to education, medical services, elderly care, and social assistance, so as to support development in those poor areas. And since 2013, China has renovated more than 100,000 schools to strengthen the provision of compulsory education in the poor areas, and ensured that all school-aged rural children, they are able to receive the elementary education within their own village. So for those poor children from the remote areas, remote village, rural areas, they do not have to climb high mountains, cross the rivers, and walk pretty far away to the county to receive the elementary education. And they are able to receive the basic education within their own villages. So this is a bigger achievement. Second, the public cultural services in poor areas have been much improved. By the end of 2020, almost 100% of villages in 22 provinces and equivalent administrative units, especially in central and western China, they had established their own cultural centers. And when we talk about cultural centers, it is in Chinese, 文化礼堂, the cultural centers. So almost in every single village, they set up a cultural centers. So this kind of campaign to bring culture to the countryside has enriched the cultural life of the rural poor. So from this photo was taken by me in 2020 when I visit a village in Jiangsu province. And this is a local county sage in a village in Jiangsu province. So they establish cultural centers and they put the county sage, those elite people, very famous people who are coming from this village. And they try to use the big poster to promote their image and try to use those county sage as an image to promote local villagers' cohesive solidarities. I also would like to show other photos I took in my field trip to different counties and villages in the past 2 years. As a sociologist, I always would like to go to the different fields, go to the different counties, county level cities or villages to do some field interview. So this village is in a remote area in Zhejiang province. And when I went to this village, I saw this picture. So I took it. So this picture is a splendid countryside scene, right? And we can see that the local villagers, they draw it on the wall and to show that how their life has been changed in the past few years. And the local villages, they also build up a platform in the middle of the village. And on this platform, the local villagers, they perform some traditional cultural drama, such as the Jing opera at this platform during some important festivals. So this is a place for the local people to engage in the local traditional cultural events. And this is the cultural center, 文化礼堂. And in the cultural center, the local villagers, every week, they will go to the 文化礼堂, the cultural center. They play, they learn knowledge. They attend the music class, and they play Jing opera and some Chinese traditional folk drama together every week in the 文化礼堂, in cultural center. And the cultural center is also a very important place for the local villagers to participate in the local event. So cultural center is also a place for the local people to participate in the local village election. This is a place for their elect their county mayor and the village mayor. So it is a way to promote the local villagers to participate and engage in the public affairs, to participate in some collective decision-making and the decision implementation process as a way to promote people's civility and their spirit of public participation and public engagement. So I think cultural center is a very important place in the past 8 to 10 years as a way to eradicate poverty and lift the people out of poverty and to give them a strong sense of public participation and public engagement. So this photo was taken last month in October. In the middle of October, I went to Zhejiang province to a county level city. I did some field research in this county level city. And I still remember in the past 5 years ago, when I went to the field, the local government cadres and officials, they would like to invite me to have a drink wine with the local government and officials and cadres. But today, when I go to the field, the local governments, and they would like to invite me to attend a concert. So when I went to this county level city, I met the party secretary that day, and he invited me to have a dinner together. and after dinner, a very quick dinner, and he invited me to go to the bookstore, and to attend music. And he invites a very famous cellist to play cello that evening. So this is totally surprised me that we can say that in today's China, the overall quality of local governments, of those cadres and officials has been improved very much. And they would like to sit quietly with other people, and they just listen to a concert. So maybe let's enjoy this famous cellist playing cello. So really amazing and really touching, right? So when we talk about reduce poverty, it is not only about income to have enough money. It is also about enrich people's cultural events and the cultural engagement. So when people, ordinary people, they go to the music tower to attend music concert, to listen to the music, so we can see that their whole spiritual life has been increased and has been promoted to a high level. The third point is about cultural heritage. The cultural heritage has been protected. And in the past 8 to 10 years, China has strengthened the protection and the promotion of traditional culture, the folk culture and ethnic culture in poor areas to maintain a wealth of cultural diversity. And we have a plan on the revitalization of traditional Chinese craftsmanship. And this councils, they implement the plan to protect and develop 5 craftsmanship in all the revolutionary-based areas, and those areas with large ethnic minority populations and very poor. It has also support poor areas to develop cultural resources with some local features, including ethnic cultural, revolutionary sites, folk culture, and some intangible cultural heritage. And the local governments in poor areas have developed tourism by conserving and promoting these cultural resources and training support staff. So we have paid strong attention to keep a record of the experiences of ordinary people in poverty alleviation. And we also use films, TV programs, and literary works themed on poverty alleviation to describe how we achieved this great battle. And also through the protection and promotion of cultural heritage in poor areas, the impoverished people have gained additional income, but still they are able to retain their old cultural roots. Fourth, intangible cultural heritage has been promoted. The initiative of promoting intangible cultural heritage workshops has been jointly carried out by the State Council Leading Group Office of Poverty Alleviation and Development under the Ministry of Culture and Tourism since 2018. The efforts are aimed at reviving the heritages while alleviating poverty. According to China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism, in 2020, more than 2,000 intangible cultural heritage workshops have been set up as part of poverty alleviation efforts and providing training to almost 200,000 people. And these workshops generate employment for more than 500,000 people and lifted more than 200,000 poor households out of poverty. In September, I went to another village, also in Zhejiang province. And the local government, they took me to a very remote area, remote village, and they invited me to visit a local middle school. So when I went into this middle school, I was totally shocked because this middle school has a long history. And within this middle school, they had a very old tower. This old tower has more than 800 years old. They also had a heritage of a college. The college is actually a temple. From the left photo, we can see that the temple is very old. They haven't been using it for like 100 years old. But in the Ming and the Qing dynasty, within this middle school, this temple has been used as an educational college, as a college. And a lot of teachers here to teach students and try to promote the local talents. And when we talk about poverty, lift poverty, and we would like to put a lot of efforts on increase the human capital input, right? When you increase the human capital input and try to promote the local talents, and I believe it is a good way to lift people from out of the poor status. So this old temple has been used as a college, but has been abandoned for the past 100 years. So the red photo is me. I visit this old temple, and so the local government, they told me that they would like to renovate this old temple and try to restore the old temple as a college. So because the human capital input to increase the education rise for every young people is a good way to lift poor people out of the poverty status. And when we talk about intangible cultural heritage, a key point is that we have to let the local people live in their local place and let the local people to retain their local culture. So I took the left photo and the right photo. Those photos are taken in a very small village. And this is the old street. And along this old street, local people, they just sit and chatting. But on the other hand, the local government also would like to try to transfer this old street into a place of tourism interest. So the local people, they are able to sell the local products, the local food, and other important goods to the tourist. The red photo is a bookstore standing in front of the old street. So from this picture, we can see that this bookstore, the decoration is very good. So in the weekend, during the weekend, a lot of local villages, they will go to the boat store and they will read books and to participate in some local cultural events. So, and it is so common that we have boat store or boat stores in the cities, especially in big cities such as Beijing and Shanghai, right? But it is so rare that we can see such a type of boat store, a huge boat store in a village. So it is a place that people can gather, can sit together, they can chat together, and they can enjoy readings from this boat store and get some spiritual promotion and try to encourage them, and get a strong encouragement to read different kinds of books. Those two pictures show that in a village, and in today's village, in today's rural places, the young people had all moved away to work and to stay in the cities. So we can see that there was a growing number of elderly people living in rural areas. So how to solve the basic living problems for those elderly people? The local governments, they organize those elderly people. They sit together and work together in their spare time and to earn some extra money. So it is a great way to let the elderly people to get some extra money and has a way to work together. The fifth point is the eco-environment has been improved. The Chinese government has integrated the poverty alleviation also with soil and water conservation and eco-environmental conservation. By developing the eco-economy, improving the rural living environment, and also relocating the impoverished people from inhospitable areas to places with better economic prospects, there have been remarkable improvements in the eco-environment of those poor areas. So for the local villages, they could get lucid waters and green mountains as their invaluable assets. So through this poverty fight, China has increased the incomes of the impoverished people, improved the eco-environment of poor areas, and made the vast rural areas more livable spaces for the local people. So we came a question, how to measure cultural achievement? How to measure cultural achievement? And in the past 5 years, I tried to use big data as an important tool to measure Chinese government's achievement in poverty alleviation and poverty eradication. So what is big data? Big data refers to data that is so large, fast, or complex that is very difficult or almost impossible to process using some traditional methods. So the importance of big data doesn't simply revolve around how much data you have. The value actually lies in how you use big data. So for me, I use big data as evidence to prove that how the Chinese government achieved a lot in the poverty reduction battle. So we published 2 papers in urban studies and in social science in 2017 and in 2018. So the big data, when we talk about big data, the data set we used is called Google Bots Ngram. It is very simple to use. So in the Google Bots Ngram, for example, when we search poverty and inequality, we just simply type those 2 words in the Google Bots Ngram. And we set up a time frame, for example, from 1800 to 2000, in those 200 years. And we search poverty and inequality. And we can see that from the middle of 20th century, the level of poverty and the level of inequality has been increased very much, right? So it is a global trend that we see a rising trend of poverty and inequality. We can also limit our search within the Chinese digital both corps, and we limit our time frame from the middle century to the present days. And our search term is 贫困 and 扶贫 in Chinese. So we can see that in the past 20 years, yes, the Chinese government, China has faced a high level of poverty, but we also put a lot of efforts in poverty reduction and poverty eradication. So use big data, use this kind of data set, we can do a lot of things. So the basic principle to use big data is that humankind, they have a knowledge, and they put their knowledge into the book. They write a lot of books. And when a lot of books has been published, those books has been collected by the libraries and different university libraries and state libraries. So Google go into the libraries and scan millions of books. And 5 million books has been scanned and analyzed. So for example, when we search Apple into the Ngram dataset, so when we talk about Apple, it is a fruit. But when we talk about Apple after Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, Apple is equal to iPhone, right? Apple is not only a fruit, but it is equal to iPhone. So using this kind of digital corpus, use this digital data set, we can describe how the cultural trends, how the social economic trends of the humankind has been changed, has been developed in the past centuries. So far, the main Google corpus consists of about 8 million volumes of books, representing 6% of all books ever printed since 1500. And the English corpus has more than 500 billion words. And since 2004, Google has been engaged in digitizing books from 40 top libraries based on the qualities of scans that could be obtained and the ability to identify a book's publication information. And by 2012, Google had scanned and identified more than 30 million books. And in my study, I use this digital corpus to measure global fame, intellectual visibility, or intellectual reputation of Chinese cities. We select a total of nearly 300 cities, including provincial capitals, prefectural cities, county-level cities, and so on and so forth. And we limit our time frame from 1700 to 2000. And we measure and sort relative intellectual visibility or global fame through 6 time periods up to 2000. For example, last 300 years, 200 years, 100 years, 100 years, 50 years, and 20 years, and 6 different time periods. And we further calculate the average score in accordance with the rank in the 6 historic periods. And we got the top 10 cities with the top 10 cities with the highest intellectual visibility. The top 10 cities are Beijing, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Nanjing, Macau, Tianjin, Taipei, Chongqing, and Lhasa. So this figure shows that from 1700 to 2000, we have the top 10 Chinese cities, and they have the top global fame, and that global fame and the intellectual reputation has been changed. within a different time period. So for example, when we say Shanghai, and after the beginning of after the middle of 19th century, the reputation of Shanghai has been increased, and it is rising very fast. And I would like to show a short video to show that in the past 500 years, how the international reputation of the different Chinese cities has been changed in the past 500 years. So why intellectual reputation and global fame is so important? Why it's so important. Why we put a lot of emphasis and attention on this intellectual reputation? Because I would like to say that the counties, cities are a crucial part of the intellectual influence of a nation's culture, as well as a very important index of a country's soft power. So actually, the intellectual status of a place is largely determined by how well it is presented and how deeply it is exposed to the global community. So therefore, when we measure the global fame or intellectual reputation or intellectual visibility, the rise and fall of a place's global fame, as well as the mechanism through which a place develops its global visibility, are crucial to inspire local people's belongings to this place. It is a good way to inspire local people's pride toward local history and cultural legacy. I would like to use a case to illustrate this point. So this is a report reporting a very famous porcelain tower in the city of Nanjing in Jiangsu province. And because this is my hometown, Nanjing is my hometown. So every time when I go back to my hometown, I ask my friends, my relatives, my family members, do you know what is porcelain town? What is porcelain town? In Chinese, it is called 大报恩寺. Local people, they don't know what is porcelain town. They don't know what is porcelain town, and if they don't know what is porcelain town, they are not able to establish a strong pride toward the local history and cultural legacy. Actually, the porcelain tower is so famous, has a global fame. The porcelain tower was marveled as one of the 7 wonders of the world in the Ming and Qing dynasty. The tower has stayed as a national treasure to both locals and other cultures around the world. And the porcelain tower has been described as the best contrived and noblest structure of all the East. It was built by the Chinese Emperor Yongle around the 15th century. And this tower has almost 300 feet high and with a lot of porcelain bricks shining in the sunlight. The tower was the largest building in China in the Ming Dynasty. And unfortunately, it was destroyed during the 19th century, during the Taiping Rebellion. So this picture shows that during the Taiping Rebellion, it was destroyed by the Taiping Rebellion, and the Taiping Rebellion put a fire on tower, and the tower is disappeared. This tower is so famous. For example, I believe we have a lot of audience. You are living in the US. So when you order the Chinese food, the takeaway food, the takeout box, in front of the takeout box, there is a tower. This tower is porcelain tower, 大报恩寺. So this is the last scene of the Big Bang Theory. We can see that Shelton, they are eating the Chinese takeout, the Chinese food, and the box in front of the box, it is the porcelain tower. The porcelain tower is so famous that it also appeared in the game Civilization. So it is equal to the ultimate weapon. So when you build up this ultimate weapon, you will win the battle, right? So it is so good. And when you build this building, the porcelain tower, there's a poet, James Russell Lowell. He said, "Things always seem fairy when we look back, and it is out of that inaccessible tower of the past that longing leads and beckons." So this is the porcelain tower in the game. But how to measure the importance and the global fame of the porcelain tower? And I have mentioned that when I go to Nanjing, go back to my hometown, I ask my friends and the relatives and family members, no one knows what is porcelain tower. And the local governments, they don't know the importance of porcelain tower. So we have to use big data as a strong evidence to show that porcelain tower is indeed one of the 7 wonders in the traditional time. So we use big data. We use the big data to measure the international fame, the global fame of porcelain tower, and compare porcelain tower with other cultural heritage. For example, we compare porcelain tower with the Great Wall. Of course, the yellow line is Great Wall. Great Wall is always stands at the top. But the porcelain tower ranks. The rank of porcelain tower is second. It's also very famous, and it can be comparable to the famous of the Great Wall, and it's much higher compared to other Chinese cultural heritage. And we can also compare the porcelain tower with another very famous tower in Hangzhou, in the city of Hangzhou. It is Leifengta. And the Chinese people, they all know what is Leifengta, but few people understand or hear about the story of 大报恩寺, the porcelain tower. So we use big data as evidence to show that porcelain tower is much more famous compared to Leifeng Tower. So this figure shows that yes, porcelain tower has much higher level of global fame compared to Leifeng Tower. So it is a way to inspire local people. If local people, they understand the history of porcelain tower, they will develop a very strong belongings to this place and develop a strong sense of pride toward the local history and the cultural tradition, cultural legacy. So culture is so important to enrich people's spiritual life. We can also use big data to compare the Great Wall and other Chinese cultural heritage to some world famous cultural heritage, such as the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And we compare the Great Wall with the Great Pyramid. We can say that, and during a different time period, they have a different level of global fame. And actually, I would argue that in the majority of time during the history, the Great Wall has much higher intellectual fame compared to the Great Pyramid, according to our big data analysis. So big data is so important. So what else have been changed? When we talk about poverty eradication, we talk about what have been changed, and my emphasis has been put on the cultural perspective. But apart from cultural perspective, what else have been changed? Or maybe we can ask, why culture is so important, apart from promoting, increasing people's income? So what else have been changed? I would argue that a new mindset. Those who have been lifted out of poverty, they actually adopt a new mindset. The mindset of the poor people has been enriched and sublimed. They have greater confidence, more active minds, and higher aspirations. They have experienced a thorough transformation from the inside to the outside. So the poverty relief efforts have not only widened channels for the impoverished to improve their material welfare, to increase their pocket money, but also rekindle their desire to seek a better life. Those poor people have been inspired to seek prosperity through hard work, self-reliance, frugality, and strive for excellence. They are highly motivated, have more confidence about getting rid of poverty. As the Chinese people always say, good days come after hard work. So today, those poor people are ready to compete in the race to prosperity. And the impoverished people have a stronger sense of self-reliance. Our poverty alleviation work has set up a new platform for the poor people to participate in collective affairs. The village affairs and the village councils and poverty relief councils, all of those councils have been improved to ensure that public affairs are discussed and handled by everyone. And under these arrangements, the poor people today, they are able to participate more in the decision-making and the decision implementation process in the poverty battle. And I just mentioned the cultural center, 文化礼堂. Every village set up a cultural center, and use cultural center as a place to have some village elections and public discussions. So every people, including those poor people, they are able to participate and have some public engagement in the decision-making process. So through this process, they are able to be motivated to participate more actively in collective affairs, and they will have more passion, more commitment to build up their own hometown, and more cohesive to develop the countryside. So in other words, the local people has a strong, cohesive solidarities after the poverty alleviation program. The poor people also have been constantly upgrading their mindset. The poverty battle has opened the door to the outside world for the poor areas. For example, the improvements in transport infrastructure have established the links between poor areas and the outside world. And the different kind of development of public cultural events and the cultural activities has enriched the cultural life of poor people with better access to the internet and with better access to the cultural resources. The poor people have great knowledge and the deeper understanding of openness, innovation, technology, rules, markets, and so on and so forth. They are able to generate more ideas and open up for poverty alleviation. And furthermore, the cultural and aesthetic world has been constantly advancing in poor regions. Civility villages and towns are being built up in poor areas, and the several families has been cultivated under the so-called 5 family virtues programs, which is encourage the local villages to respect for the law, encourage people to have diligent study, to have family planning, to build up a harmonious domestic family, and the industrial management of the household. And the new cultural practice with the local and modern essence are also developing in rural areas. And we can see that the village rules, agreements among villages, and the councils on moral issues have also been promoted to update some outdated and undesirable habits and the customers. And the activities such as competition for best households and the families have been organized to carry forward, to cherish some traditional family habits and traditions, and enhance social civility. And some good social practice, including modest weddings and funerals and harmonious neighborhoods, and helping those people who are in need. The weak people, the disabled people, the elderly people have also been promoted. So when we talk about lift poor people out of the poverty, we talk about income, but not only income, but also cultural engagement. Based on the cultural engagement and the public engagement in different kinds of cultural events and the cultural activities, the local people in those rural areas, in those poor areas, they could get a new mindset. And this is a new journey, a new life. So to conclude today's course, I would argue that removing the label of extreme poverty is not only the end, but actually it is the beginning of a new life and a new journey, especially for those poor people, because we are still, China still remains the world's largest developing country. We are still confronted by the gap between unbalanced and inadequate development and the people's growing desire for a better life. And because people has a long expectations for the future development. And they would like to live a better life. So we have to give their better life. But we are not only give their better life, but we are also give those people a strong spiritual mindset, a strong hope to develop on their own base. We are still because we are still confronted by the gaps between urban and the rural areas and between the different regions. We can see that in the eastern regions, in Zhejiang province, in Jiangsu province, in Shanghai, in those big cities, the average level of development goes very fast. But in the inland and the western regions, a lot of people still suffered. They have a strong desire for a better life. So basically, at this point, we still have much to do in order to realize people's all-round development and common prosperity for all. So for the Chinese government, the poverty battle actually is just the beginning. We are aiming to achieve the common prosperity in 2050, right? This is our goal, the Chinese government goal. So for the Chinese government, they will always remain committed to its founding mission, which is striving for the people's well-being and the development of the whole nation. It will always put every single people before anything else, and continue to work for people's all-round development and the common prosperity and a better life for all of the people, for every single people, no matter how old they are, how far away they live, and how they engage with the local affairs. And we have put every people to lift every people out of the poverty status, those people living in impoverished regions, and gave them a strong hope, and give them and empower them to engage in the public affairs and the local affairs. And we also have to retain the local culture, and give people a strong belongings, a strong sense to the local place, so that people can cultivate a pride towards local history and the cultural legacy. So basically, this is my today's talk. And today's course, actually, I put a lot of emphasis on the cultural aspect of the poverty eradication program in China's efforts. And I will also give a single case study last week, and to illustrate how the local government, they promote the poverty alleviation program and try to lift the poor people out of the poverty status. And not only through the material welfare program, but also through the cultural programs. And when we talk about the culture, we do not forget we can use big data as a tool to measure culture, because culture is so hard, it's so difficult to measure. So we use big data as a way to measure global fame, intellectual visibility, intellectual reputation of different cities. So when we use this intellectual visibility as an index, we can measure a country's soft power, because the intellectual status of place is largely determined by how this country integrates into the global community. So we talk about big data today. We talk about the cultural aspect of the poverty today. We talk about the culture of poverty today. But we have to remember, when we talk about poverty, when we lift those poor people out of poverty, we not only give their money, increase their money pocket money, we also give their strong confidence to live a better life, strong hope for a better future. So this is what the Chinese government did in the past 8 to 10 years. And this is a key step for the Chinese government to achieve the victory of the poverty battle in the past 10 years. So this is a great and huge achievement for the Chinese government. So remember, cultural perspective is a very important element, a very important factor in poverty eradication. Okay, this is the end of today's talk. Thank you so much. And I would like to answer any questions for the last 15 minutes.